Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, or good night, depending on where you are. Everybody hear me okay? Excellent. Sounds good. So I want to say good morning to everybody and welcome you to the exciting new Griffeye Intelligence Database that we have just released at the end of last week. This database, or the new database system, brings some incredible changes to the software, our Analyze DI, in both our desktop version and our server versions. And the Griffeye Intelligence Database replaces all the legacy databases that we had before and puts it into one intelligence database. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But before I get started, I just want to let you know we have a couple of fellows from Griffeye Analyze from the development team that are in the webinar with us this morning. So if you have any questions that I can't answer, they should be able to help you out. Just post them up in the chat box, and they will hit me a message privately so I can make sure I see your question. So what we're going to talk about this morning or today is a couple of different things. We're going to talk about what the GID is, or what the Griffeye Intelligence Database System is. You're going to hear me call it the GID, and that's pretty much what we're calling it from this point forward. So we're also going to talk about how it's different from the old system, how we can migrate and get started with the new GID, so how we can get our old hashes from our old database system into the new database system, and how we can set up and administer a shared GID. So now the system allows you to share your database or your intelligence loaded database with literally anybody in the world who has an internet connection that you can share with and has the ability to run a GID themselves. We're also going to talk about how to seamlessly share intelligence with other investigators, how you can basically set up a shared GID, give access to anybody you'd like. And then we're going to talk about how to match the intelligence within your case. So if you're running a case, we can talk about the differences within the application that you'll see, some of the minor differences. And then, of course, any questions and answers you may, or I'm sorry, any questions you may have about the GID. Now, realize this is the first iteration of the GID. This is version 19.0. So there are features. There's a lot of feature requests that are still coming in. People are interested in, can it do this? Can it do that? And they're all in the roadmap. But we still want to hear what you have to say. So if you have a request about something in particular, please let us know. All right, without further ado, let's jump into the program and take a look at the GID. So this is, you can see that there's not many changes to the interface. At the top, we now have our Manage GIDs button, Update GIDs, and Migrate to GIDs. Now, when you first install version 19, it's going to prompt you with a little question, and it's 3 buttons asking whether or not you're involved in the migration process. And if you are, it'll step you through how to migrate your old databases into your new database system. And if you're not, you can just skip forward and continue to use your old databases. Now, you'll notice up at the top here that we have our database manager, but it is in read-only mode. You'll notice up at the top here, we can connect to databases, we can remove them, we can move them around, export data from them, but we cannot import any new intelligence into the database. And that is by design, because we'd like you to switch to the new system. I don't know exactly when access to the legacy hashes will be deprecated, but as it stands now, they are still in read-only mode and they still match against your case. So you will see those results. But once you are ready to migrate, if you do answer those 3 questions and it says you are the person to migrate your hashes, you will be presented with the Migrate to GID migration tool, and you can access it anytime you want up here from the ribbon, and it looks just like this. It's a really cool little program that's going to take any hashes that you have in your old database, and let me go over that again real quick, sorry. So in this database system I have set up, I have my Project Vic hashes set up. And as you can see, it's 6 million hashes there, the photo DNA, and my full non-pertinent as well. So these are my old databases that I would want to migrate. So I would select migrate to the GID. And I'm going to basically step through. It says, which GID would you like to migrate? Note, you can update another GID. So if you have a local GID or a GID running on a server or someone else remotely, you can actually update their GID with the intelligence from your old database system. So I'm going to leave it at local GID and select next. And this is saying, hey, we have 4 sources that we saw, but 3 of them have already been migrated over. So if I only want to migrate this particular one over, I can migrate it. And it says, what source would you like to assign to it? So the difference between the old system and the new system is the old system is several databases, one containing each hash type, MD5, SHA-1. So each hash type would require a separate database. In the new system, it's one database, one GID that is populated with several sources. So when I say hash source here, think of the old database system that we're going to be populating that database with hashes. Now it's just changed to sources. So I'm going to select this DI training. That's the only one I want to migrate over. So I'll click migration and it pops over. This is a pretty small database and it's telling me it's finalizing the migration. So it's taking the data from the old system and it's just pushing it into the new system. So while that's going on, a couple things. In order to, if you have the core version of Griffeye Analyze, you will only have a local GID. You will not be able to connect to other people, or you will not be able to share a GID, so you won't be able to share your intelligence outwardly to other people. And the way that you would do that is you install a standalone version of the program, and you can obtain that on our website through your, let me just pull it up real quick while this is working. Okay, so yeah, you can obtain, it's a separate installation file. So let me show you this. Okay, my migration has completed successfully. It says, hey, it's good to go. We've got all green bubbles at the top. Now I'm going to close it out. Now it doesn't look like anything's happened, but if I go up to my Manage GID button, and again, this kind of replaces the old Manage Hash databases, but the button's still there because it's read-only. As you can see here, we are now in the GID manager. So this effectively replaces the old database manager. And in here, I have the list of my GIDs. And as you can see, because I'm running the pro version, I can add a GID, and I can add a GID to share out, or I can add a GID remotely that I can share in. So let's take a look at this first GID. It's my local GID, and everybody who has this version of the program will have a local GID. And in order to look, well, actually, up at the first thing I want to point out is the number 1 in the upper left-hand corner. It indicates the GID's priority, and you can drag and drop those to reset priorities, which I'll show you in a little while. The checkbox indicates that we have a valid connection to the GID, so the program is communicating correctly. And you'll also notice in the program down at the bottom right-hand corner here, we have GID status next to your filters button, indicating you do have a good connection. So if I want to look at the sources within my GID, I can do so. Now remember, this kind of replaces the database manager. So think of these GID sources as the old databases. But note that each one can contain multiple hash types. So this one, for example, my Project Vic database, if I select the info button, I go in there and it shows me that this particular GID source contains MD5, photo DNA, and SHA-1 hash values, as well as this intelligence, 4 series and 9 distribution status, as well as here's all the categorization for those files. So that's basically my local GID that I've created. And here's a sample of a fully non-pertinent source that I have. Now, I set this one up for previously charged files as kind of an example that you could set up a GID. I don't have anything in there at this time, but you could set up a source of previously charged files just as you would set up a local hash database. Now, again, prioritization. Oh, before I forget, here's the source that I just, I just migrated over. So if I take a look at it, it's got all the intelligence that I pushed into it. I don't like the name that I left here. So in order to change any settings here within this GID source, I would click the edit button. And now I want to change this to just GI training, and I can do that. And when I untick edit, it goes back and it's good to go. So this, if I want to prioritize as well, let's say I want to put this GID source above this, I would just drag and drop. That's all I'm doing. That's how I would reprioritize the GID. If I was interested in doing so, I can certainly do that. The apply to case. So I'm going to talk about that when we jump back out and create a new GID. So let's say I want to add a source manually. So I'm inside my GID and I would like to add my own source. It's very easy. It's very similar to the old import. So I would select add source, and it says, what file would you like to add from? If I tick import, notice that it'll bring in CSV files, text, our JSON, and our ICSI formatted CSV files. And I am going to go over to here we go. So I'd say I'm going to select this JSON file. What source name do I want to add it? I'll call it PV training. But notice it popped up and it recognized that it was a VIX version 1.3 file. One other thing to note is that there aren't very many changes to VIX 2.0, but this does support version 2.0. So any VIX 2.0 files you have in version 19 and forward will be supported. Also notice that it's saying, hey, what kind of hash types would you like to import? If you know this file only has MD5s, you can untick everything else. But notice also that you can select multiple into the same source, as well as your distribution status, tag, series, and categorization. And it read within this JSON that there were local categories, and it says, hey, I'm going to use the local categorization you have in your case. But if not, you can manually map them if you want to. If you have different categories in the file you're bringing in, you can remap them as well. So that's how you would perform an import. And then I select import, and it brings in, it's checking those different hash types, and it's bringing that in. So now I'm effectively adding a new source to my GID. And notice it says up here, it's telling you, hey, wait a second, I'm still working. So just give it a minute. And if I go back out to my local GID, you'll see that it is synchronizing the data so that so the program has access. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that my GID status is temporarily offline. So that is basically the how you're going to if you want to import a source into a GID. It's quite easy. Here's all the information. It's telling you what it's doing. So it's it's processing those 3,000 files. Now for a video that I did a migration that took approximately 10 hours, and it was the full Project Vic non-pertinent set, NSRL, as well as the actual full Project Vic files. So there, my local GID is now just synchronized. Everything looks like it's good to go. So now, the difference is if I create a case now, and in my import settings, now you'll see that it says use GID and hash databases. So it's using both. When you process your case, it's going to check against your legacy databases as well as your the new GID. So that's when you're creating a new case. And also, you can exclude now. So before, just like you could exclude from category, we can still do that. But you can also exclude files that match against any GIDs you're connected to. So if I have, you'll notice that I have my local GID with these different, all the different hash sources that I have in there, as well as my legacy databases as well. So I could just tick and say, hey, if it hits in this Project Vic non-pertinent, just don't even bring it into the case. And you'll see here in a minute when we connect to a remote GID, if you have someone or someone that has a GID that's loaded up with a really robust non-pertinent hash database, you can simply connect to it and then use all that intelligence within your own case. So that's pretty cool. You can now exclude from within GID sources as well. So back to the GID manager. So now I have my local GID. And in here, in this case, let me show you. I've already created and processed this case against the GID. So you'll notice we have some new quick filters under our filters panel on the right-hand side. Under intelligence, we have GIDs, and you'll see that we have matches against some GIDs. Now, this case was processed against a GID that was in Florida. So it's got some remote hits from the Florida. It was called the Florida ICAC GID, Project Vic and Project Vic non-pertinent. But notice there's also matches from my local GID as well. So you can also see your hashes from within your local databases, your legacy databases as well. But for now, there's all the GID information, as well as in any thumbnail header icon. If you hover over the database button, you'll see all the matches in all the different database systems that you have. So that's where you're going to see that information within the program. So now let's say you want to, we want to share this intelligence. So I have a GID, or excuse me, I have a set of information that I want to, or intelligence, a huge database that I want to share to people. It's super simple. I would just select this Add GID button, and it asks me what my what I want to call my GID. And so this is the dialog if I want to create a added GID, or excuse me, if I want to create a shared GID that I'm going to share to someone else, or if I just want to connect to one that I know somebody else is sharing. So let's start with, I just want to connect to one that I know somebody else is sharing. So I have a colleague in Gainesville, Florida, who has a GID. I'm sorry. I just got a message saying, will the webinar cover the installation of the standalone GID? I wasn't going to cover it because it's actually an extremely simple process. It's basically you just run an installation program and you do the standard next finish, and it'll install it in as a service. And I'll show you that here in a second. Let me see. So my GID is currently running. I'll show you the window right here. So this GID is running, and you'll see it running if you open up your task manager or services. You'll see that the Griffeye Intelligence Database is running. And that's what happens when you do the standalone service. When you install the standalone service, it actually installs a service that automatically runs when the program is up and running. Now, I want to show you where you could obtain the standalone installation file. So in your products area under your downloads, you'll see Griffeye Intelligence Database, the latest version. If you go to either one of these, go to the download page, you can download right there the Griffeye Intelligence Database, and it's just a download. It's just an MSI file. You run it, you install it, and it asks you where you want to put. Going back in time there, showing too many at the same time. If you just do the next finish, it's going to run it as a service. So even if Analyze DI is not running, as long as that service is running and it can be communicated with, people can connect to your GID. So you don't have to have Griffeye Analyze up and running in order for people to access your GID. So back to the, I have a friend in, whoops, that's the name, in Gainesville. And they're on the ICAC unit there. So I want to connect to their GID. So again, I just selected Add GID from the GID manager, and I put in their IP address. And I know this gray box here has all that HTTP and colons and all that other stuff, but all you have to type in is actually the IP address or localhost if you're going to share. And then if I click the test button, you'll see I got a good connection. Now, enable apply to case. What that means is this, I am going to allow this GID to affect the categorization and intelligence information within my case and any sources that might be contained within that GID. Now, why might you want to unselect that button or not enable apply to case? Now, let's say you know somebody who has a GID that it uses a different categorization schema than you. They use, let's say they have 4 categories for illegal child abuse material. Now, you don't want that categorization to overwrite your categorization because it's completely different. So you could uncheck enable apply to case, And then all you're going to get is matches within the GID, but it's not going to actually change anything locally within your casework. So I have enable apply to case. Now selectively, I can go into individual sources and deselect which ones I do not want to apply to case. But for here, I'm just going to leave this apply to case. And when I click save, it adds it. And notice now I've named it the Gainesville spelled wrong ICAC, but there's two sources in there. And if I open it up, it quickly shows me. And again, this is a remote GID that is running on an operations server in Gainesville. And I can quickly look in there and see that this is a 6 million file strong Project Vic hash database with lots of information in here, all the victim identified offender stuff. So imagine now that I wanted to get access to the full Project Vic set there. That process would have historically taken me several hours. I would have had to download JSON files, taking a long period of time, and then individually upload those and put them into, or import those into my own databases. But now I can simply click add GID, select to it, and I'm good to go. And notice down here in the bottom too as well, if I close out the manager, the GID status comes up on both of my hash databases or any hash databases I'm connected to. So and all these sources are obtainable. So here's the full non-PERT. So this is a 65 million strong hash database within. Now, the one thing I will note, this version of the GID, there are no read-write permissions. So anything I could affect within my local GID. So if I wanted to go here and edit this and remove a source, I could. But if I could also do that with a remote GID. So as it stands now, I can also affect something externally. So this is the Gainesville GID. And if I wanted to change something, I hit the edit button. And you're warned saying you're about to change settings that are shared with other users. Please refer to the user manual for detailed info. This is telling you you're about to change something that's affecting somebody's GID somewhere else. So when it comes to sharing your GID initially, before we have permissions built in, which is on the roadmap. So read-write permissions for remote GIDs, being able to set them and being able to restrict access for editing is something that is in the roadmap and it's coming. So just stand by for that. But up until that point, you're going to get this warning box saying that you can potentially affect somebody else's remote GID. So just keep that in mind. Now, let's say I want to add a GID for other people to connect to. So I would simply select add GID, and I can call this one my shared GID. And again, I'm just going to type in localhost and click test, and I'm going to click save. Now this is my shared GID. Now I have already populated this GID with some sources. So I've got my this other source and my PV training. But now this GID is available for other people to, if I just give out my IP address, they can now connect to my GID and harness the intelligence from what I've shared with them. So you have your local GID, your one I'm connected to remotely, and one that I've shared. And notice the priority, we have 1, 2, and 3. So I've prioritized GIDs as, and I can drag and drop. Like I said before, if I click the edit button, I can drag this around. And the edit button also allows me to rename things. If I want to call this something else, I can. If I want to change the apply to case status, things like that. So I have got this all prioritized the way I want. Now when I create a case, and if I close this out, and if I do add files to current case, let's see if this comes up in my exclude filters. Now you can see it's add this Gainesville ICAC and any of my local shared GIDs as well. So it's on the fly picking up that I have new database attachments in there. And once the case is done running, you also have your database matches as well, once it's processed as before, but we also have our GID matches. It kind of shows you a list of how many and what sources they matched in, and some kind of conflicts and stuff like that. And that's just because of the training, the state of the training files have different notifications and such. Now, within your case, I pointed out that we're also going to have it, you're going to have that match in your database, but as well in the grid view, you also have your, you have grid matches as well. And as you can see, it's split up based on source, your local GIDs and that type of thing. So that's where the stuff is internally inside your program. Now, when you've completed your case, if you're done, actually, let me back up again. If we, let's say you would like to, you've connected to a new GID or something, and you would like to rescan your data in your case against your GID. You'll see now that we have this rescan case against GIDs button. Now, this is a double button, so there's an action at the top that is different from the action at the bottom. And if you hover over the top, you'll see that it says this is going to rescan files against all available GIDs. Any manual categorization you've done, so if I go in here and I categorize this file and I categorize this file, any categorization that I've done manually, it's not going to overwrite, but it's going to overwrite the categorization of any other file. So basically, it's going to do the work that you haven't done. So if you scan against it, it's going to check against all the GIDs and any files that match in there. It's going to apply the intelligence and categorization to your case, with the exception of anything you've done manually, because we don't want you to overwrite your manual stuff. Now, at the bottom, if you want to the bottom button, if you want to rescan against a particular GID source, you can. And notice it says overwrite from local GID source or overwrite from Gainesville. So this is going to overwrite any categorization you've done. If I select, let's say I want to overwrite from Gainesville ICAC, this is going to overwrite any of my manual categorization. It says here, by clicking one of the source buttons to rescan, you understand any user categorization will be overwritten by the data in the selected source. So if I say understand and confirm and I hit Project Vic, it's going to rescan and categorize against the Project Vic source within the Gainesville ICAC GID that I'm connected to. I'm not going to run that right now for speed purposes. So the difference is, the bottom part of the button is and it says overwrite. That's just indicating it's going to overwrite your manual categorization. So if you want to go against a particular source, it's going to overwrite manual categorization. But if you want to rescan everything, excluding your manual categorization, you would click the rescan button up at the top, and now it's going to scan against all my available GIDs. So that is, and then that's going to go ahead and do its work there. So while that's going, let's talk about, if we are ready to, we are ready to update our GID. This may lock me out. No, it looks like it's good to go, but notice my connection status is disconnected because it's working right now, but because it's rescanning down here in the bottom. So if I'm done with my case and I want to update my GIDs, just like before, updating any categorization work that you've done in the update database dialog. So now this interface is a lot better, in my opinion, than the last one. So if I want to update, let's say I've completed my work and I want to update my local GID, I can update my categorization work, and I just want to update child abuse, child exploited, and CGI animation, let's say. Got a couple options down here at the bottom. By default, it's ticked. It says only include categories and intelligence sent by user. And it says it's going to keep track of the origin of the categories and intelligence by user. And if you uncheck it, everything will be uploaded to the GID. What that means is, that was my rescan finishing. So it rescan finishing against my case, and we'll check that out in a second. But what this is saying is only push categories and intelligence set by user. It's still going to push hashes. So if you want to push every hash up there, just like the old system, and you can untick that, every file that you or every hash that you send is going to be given a category. But if this is selected, only the hashes assigned by an investigator or by a user is going to be pushed up. Everything else is going to be assigned no category. So it'll still be pushed to the database, but it'll be assigned no category. So leaving it ticked just updates the work that you've done, not any work that's been matched by the GID or any GID you're connected to. So that's the difference there. And also notice when you update, it's going to automatically update Categories Intelligence to a source called casework. So if I select local GID and let's say I just want to update, we'll just do this for speed, 46 files, and I'm going to hit start update. And it's done. It's good to go. Now when I go back to my GID and I go to my, so I went back to my local GID and you'll see now I have 6 sources. And here's my casework source that has all the hashes that I pushed up in there. Now, because I didn't deselect that box, it pushed up just the files that I manually categorized, or I'm sorry, not the files, the hashes and intelligence. And it left no category on the 43 that were automatically assigned. And the reason it's set like that is because that file matched somewhere else in another GID and another GID source. But if you might not have access to that GID in the future, you would untick that box, and then that way anything you push up there will receive its categorization. Any matching will still alert you. You just won't get any, you won't receive any categorization from that particular thing. So, and then you can also, again, that casework source is created on the fly. And you could, if you wanted to, as you can see, it's not letting you change that name. So basically all your local hashes that you update are going to go into this casework source. So anything from within your case, that way you'll always know, hey, this hit from a previous case of mine. So, and then let's talk about, I talked about, if you want to import a source, let's say I want to import a source that is just a text file containing hash values. So it's not a JSON, it's just a list of MD5s or SHA-1s or whatever it is that you might want to bring in. So let's say, for example, I have this list of MD5s. This text file is just a list. There's no categorization, there's no intelligence, there's no nothing. And I want to bring it in. So I'm going to select this source name, and we'll call this previously charged files, let's say. In order to assign a categorization, I have to do it manually if it does not exist in the import source. Again, this is just a text file with a list of MD5s. I have to go down here and select which category I want to assign it to. Typically, it's going to be non-pertinent, but you can assign it to whatever you want. And you can also assign any of the series and tag information you have, any distribution status. But for this, I just want to bring in this list of MD5s. It's 1,000, and it's going to bring it in. And because now here's my previously charged files. Now, because I assigned it that non-pertinent category, it assigned it as such. You can also bring it in without assigning categories. If you do that, it's not going to assign anything. It's just going to be no category. The hashes and intelligence will still be there, but there will be no, I'm sorry. So on the, if I want to export from a particular source, let's talk about that. If I want to export, it's very simple, just like before. I could just select the export button, and it says, what type would you like to export as? And our 3 options are CSV, comma separated value, a text file, or a VIX file, the VIX case file. And you show that you can deselect whichever hash types you don't want. If there's multiple hash types within the database, just deselect the ones you don't want to export. And it says, where do you want to put it? That sounds good. I'll put it right there. And I hit export, and it's going to go ahead and export all those out. I want to open the export file. Yes, I do. And all it did was bring in this VIX MD5. There it is right there. That's my exported file with all the intelligence that I put on there. So it's quite simple. The system is very user-friendly and very smart, and I think it's a lot cleaner than the old system. And just the ability to connect this to anywhere in the world. So if I wanted to connect to my my colleague in Australia, I could do so. I could set up a theoretically unlimited amount of GIDs, because the more intelligence that you check your cases against, the less work you're going to be repeating. So if you can connect to robust hash sources, the more of those you have, the more overlap, the less files you're going to have to go through in your cases. So it's all about taking that accumulated knowledge. It's all about taking that stored work and historical investigations and applying that to your cases right now. So before the old system, you would have to be connected to at least a local network drive somewhere where you could share this. But now we've taken that and we have expanded it out so you can share this with anybody in the world, which just to me is amazing. I'm so excited to see how people benefit from this and how quickly we can get some proliferation of some really good GIDs that people can share and just help each other out. Now, just, I mean, think of all the work that is probably being repeated from country to country just because one country doesn't realize that another country has intelligence that could help them in their case locally. And we've basically bridged that gap so you can now harness the power of that connectivity just about anywhere in the world. All right. Any questions on anything we covered? Sorry, I'm going through the, wow, there's a lot of, it looks like a lot of good conversation going on. Wow, I hope we don't. Okay, I just saw a question. Does this work only on Pro? And it looks as though, no. So Core works as well, but when you install Core, you only have a local GID. You will not have the ability to connect any additional GIDs in addition to that, to your local one. Yes, you can still use your old hash databases. The only thing is, again, is when you're in read only, you will not be able to update any of the intelligence within your database. But you can still migrate. So the core version again comes with a local GID, and you can migrate your hash databases to it. I recommend that you guys all watch the videos on our website. There's 3 videos that I've produced that basically walk you through all that stuff. And it's located at this GID information hub on our website. That's going to give you a lot more information as well. Here's your user documentation that will answer that question as far as what kind of system do you want, or do you need to be running the GID? The GID migration tool, I walk you through that, how to set it up, how to use it, some frequently asked questions, and then the webinar that's going on right now. So I highly recommend you use those resources on the website as well. Let's see. GID on Core and shared drive. I'm not sure how that works at this point. I do know that, remember, the licensing for Core and Pro, the whole theory behind everything was Core is for a single user, single case. Pro is designed for collaboration. And the ability to collaborate to multiple files, or excuse me, multiple GIDs anywhere in the world is going to exponentially increase the amount of, or potentially exponentially increase the amount of intelligence that you're going to be able to match your case against. So that's taking that collaboration and putting it on steroids. Yes, it is possible to merge Project Vic JSON updates into one source in a GID. Yes, absolutely. So notice if I go to manage GIDs, this Project Vic has MD5's PhotoDNA and SHA-1s all in one source. So, and then if I wanted to add additional intelligence to this source, I would just select edit and then import. And then I can import whatever additional information I want. Now, in the migration wizard, hopefully I've already migrated everything, so hopefully it won't give me a hard time. When you go to migrate over, it asks you what source you want to assign it, but you can also select a previously assigned source. So you can also put that into something that already exists within there. Yes, shared GIDs will not work in the core version. So you could, I would break everything up by source. So if you're gonna have your Project Vic stuff, instead of like before we had Project Vic MD5 and Project Vic Photo DNA. Now it's all sitting in one source. But I like to separate out the non-pertinent source. I've always done that before in my investigations. Is I'd have non-pertinent set separately as well as NSRL. That would be its own separate source. That way you just have more information as far as how the matching goes. Any other questions on are the, oh wait, here we go. From a local GID ad source, you choose the location. It appears you can access a network path. I do not know. So it says, do you just port forward 8774 to your GID server? Yes. So 8774 and 8775 are the two. I think one of them, but it's definitely 8774 for sure. Sorry. I got to go to my edit button. This one's 8775 is the local GID. I'm sorry, it's 8774. So, yep, you port forward 8774. But you don't have to put this all in because the program knows that it's listening on 8774. Yeah, so basically what Joseph just said was that we don't have access control right now. That is on the roadmap and is high up on the priority list so that we can restrict that. Now, before everyone freaks out and oh my God, everyone's going to destroy my GID and it's going to be mayhem and I'm going to have a GID and someone's going to connect and delete all my sources. Don't share your GID with somebody that you don't, obviously an entity that you don't trust. I would start, if you're going to start sharing and collaborating, I would start locally with people that you may work on your same squad, on your same unit, your same group, and then just, go from there. But also realize that there's going to be logs and things to see exactly who's connected and what IP addresses. So it's not like you couldn't investigate who blew up your GID right now. And I just can't imagine somebody in this realm being malicious and doing something like that at this point. But will analyze DIK licenses work for all core versions or just 19? I'm not sure about the licensing questions. One standalone GID installed on a computer server in the office. Yes, you can collaborate with that. You absolutely can. Yep, you can have it set up on whatever, and one person can administer it, and everybody else can connect to it. That's the idea, right? Is to be able to connect to as many intelligent sources as possible. And the developers have done an amazing job. They've worked really hard on this, and I think it's a fantastic system. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it's utilized in the future. All right. Is there anything I have not covered that you would like me to talk about? Again, this is new, so this system's new to me. I never used it in investigations, so I'm learning it as well. But it's so far in my testing and my making my videos, it works really well. As long as you just give it time to do the work that it needs to do. When it's telling you it's synchronizing or it's deleting data or it's doing something, just give it a couple minutes and let it do its thing. That's pretty important. One issue I see with this, sync locally from one machine. Yeah, that's true. Something on the roadmap as well is the ability to to sync with somebody else's GID. So basically, mirror. So if I know a guy in Canada that has a really nice GID of adult pornography or something that I want to match against, I can. It would be nice to be able to mirror that and pull it down so that if I lose access to that remote GID, I still have that intelligence locally. What wasn't covered? Not sure. I'm sorry. I'm just reading these. Yeah. At David, that sounds correct. That you would install, fill it with hashes, give your users IP so the DI can talk to it. Correct. Yep. And yeah. So yeah, the idea is that you could have one person that just does all the administration and have everybody just connect to it. And the shared now, I connected to the Gainesville ICAC, but you can also connect to if you have somebody with a GID on a. Whoops, I keep doing that. If you have someone on a GID 168 on a local installation. So this is a GID running on my laptop on another computer. I got to give it a name and hit test. There it is, and click save. There. Now I've just connected to one on a local network. So it doesn't really matter if it's a local IP or a publicly resolvable IP address. You can still connect to it. All right. Any more questions on anything we covered? If my partners in there would like to let me know that they're good to go and all the questions have been answered, we can go ahead and conclude this. Again, I want to point you guys to the resources on our website. That GID information hub, anything that you have, any questions you have can probably be answered in here. And you can watch these. Again, they're quick little 5-minute videos that kind of reiterate what I just discussed today. And that's pretty much it. How would you, okay, I see a question. How would you update the Project Vic server? Or I'm sorry, the Project Vic data? You'd still need the intelligence agent to download those hashes, but you would simply just go into your local GID, go into your local GID and import, edit, and then import to whatever source you would like to import that hash information to, any of the updates. Unfortunately, it's still manual. So Carmelo, it says, are there any improvements for the core users? I would say that all core users benefit from the development that is done on the pro side. So all the bug fixes, all the everything else that's been updated within the program in version 19. Because remember, version 19 wasn't just, hey, we're just going to leave 18.6 and we're going to stick the GID in it. There were also improvements that were done with the program as well. So that's the thing about the core version versus the our pro version, is that this is one free piece of software that benefits from the development of the pro version. So it's not just some standalone program that doesn't get updated. It doesn't get that doesn't get developed because some guy wrote it 6 years ago and he forgot about it. He moved on to other things. This is a product that benefits from the work that is done with DI Pro. So there are absolutely improvements with core. Any improvements that came along with version 19, they also came along with core as well. So, all right. All right. So any from let me just check with my developers on here to make sure everything good to go. Let's see. All right, looks like we're good. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And if you have any questions, let me put this back. You have my contact information, Eric.Oldenburg@Griffeye. I can walk you through whatever you'd like me to. Hopefully, you guys will really start to see the benefits from this system. I can't tell you how excited I am. All the hard work that's been done by everybody on the Griffeye team. It's just been amazing. And the way this can seamlessly, quickly connect is just outstanding. When I was in Atlanta last week at a conference, I had everybody in the class connect to a GID that we had running in Florida to test, as well as one that we had running here in Arizona. So I really look forward. So please, any information, feature requests, any cool things that you have, please post them up in the forum so other users can benefit as well. I really appreciate it. And you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and take care. Cheers.